You're live, Gary.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go. We're live. All right, thank you, everybody, for joining the Hudson 7 Drinking Water Council hybrid monthly meeting today. And today is Thursday, July 20th, right? My name is Gary Bassett. I'm also the mayor of the village of Rhinebeck and chair of the Hudson 7. The in-person meeting component of our meetings will occur here at our Poughkeepsie Water Treatment Plant, a facility located at 38431 North Road, Poughkeepsie, New York. Public comment is allowed, both in person and remotely. The Hudson 7 meetings are recorded and streamed live on your YouTube channel page, and a link to that page can be found on our website, which is www.hudson7.org. Video of all meetings and minutes are available on the public to the public on the Hudson 7 website. If a member of the public would like to participate during the public comment section of our virtual meeting, please review our procedures for public or written comment on that website. Hudson 7 members, please, if you're remote, please control your own mute button. Good practice would be to mute yourself if you're not speaking to eliminate any background noise. When you wish to speak, please raise your hand and I will acknowledge you and acknowledge you to speak. Before you speak, please state your name and municipality for all of our audio listeners. So in attendance tonight, we have here at the table, I'm going to start over there, Russ Gilmore from Town of Lloyd. Welcome, Russ. Mark, how are you? Mark Nelson.
Good to see you, Mayor.
City of Poughkeepsie. Nick Butler, Town of Esopus. Devin, I'm not going to just go with your last name. Devin from Dutchess. Rigolino, I can never get that. Yes. And Lynn Ruggiero from Ruggiero, geez, from Hyde Park. And Dottie. Ginobili. Yeah, everybody get a number and I got it. You know, and on the screen we have Elizabeth Spinzia from the town of Rhinebeck, Paul Malrose, our technical advisor, and Rebecca Martin, our technical advisor as well. So welcome everybody. I believe we have enough for a quorum. So
Gary? Gary?
Yes.
Mike Foraging is here as well from the DOH, and Dan Shapley, and Shannon just joined on her phone.
Very good.
Shannon, yep, from the town of Esopus, and Dan Shapley from Riverkeeper.
I pull up the agenda here in my pile of papers. Thought I had it. I do. Hang on. You want it? I do want it, but I want to make sure I have it. No problem. If not, I will ask me. I don't know what I do with it. I'm gonna take yours, Russ. Sure. Don't mind. Oh, found it. Good. Knew it would come. Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to call the meeting to order. Roll call has been taken and quorum determination has been made. Do I have a second? Thank you, Russ. All right. Next on the agenda, I'd like to approve the meeting minutes from June. What was the date on June 15th, 2023?
So moved.
So moved. Have a second. Any discussion? Nope. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Bye.
All right, Rebecca. How about the announcements, please?
There were two. There was a request from the Grassroots Environmental Education Group requesting the Hudson 7 to sign on to a moratorium on Indian Point tritium discharges, as well as a notice on the EPA's proposed PFAS rule. And all of those communications in full are in your source materials in the Hudson 7's docket. That's it.
Thank you. All right, we have some exciting stuff going tonight. Right?
Oh, we have public comment too, it looks like maybe.
Yes, comments? Do we have any online or
No.
submitted?
No, but I see somebody sitting in the back of the room. Is that?
He was here before. Introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is John Rath. I'm a citizen of Poughkeepsie. Really appreciate the agenda items that you folks are talking about and your support of keeping the Hudson River clean.
Thank you.
I'll try not to comment where I'm not supposed to, but can't promise.
Good, thanks. Next. Okay, the first thing on our agenda this evening is Hudson 7 coordinator and consultant position. Okay. The first is a resolution authorizing an amendment to the bylaws, which has all been distributed to everyone here and on the council. I'm not going to go into, I can read the resolution if you like, but I would first like to make a motion to approve the resolution to approve the amendment to our bylaws. Russ, thank you for your second.
I'll second.
Russ beat you, thank you. Any comments? Hearing none? Yes, isn't it? Hearing none, I'm gonna make a, motion to approve and carried. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So carried. Good stuff. All right, next on the agenda. Hudson 7 treasurer appointment of Elizabeth Spinsey of the town of Rhinebeck. Elizabeth, you want to make a comment before we vote on you?
I'm happy to do it. If anyone else would like it, I'm happy to support you as well.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve Elizabeth Spinsey, town of Rhinebeck, as our treasurer. Lynn got this one.
He looks this way, so I flared him.
I'm trying to go this way. All right. Any discussion?
Nope.
Anybody else want the job?
Thank you.
I mean, literally, thank you, Elizabeth, for wanting to do this, but at the most, we envision this, maybe 2 checks a month.
I've done it before for the Supervisors and Mayors Association, and I take care of Rhinebeck's money, and I'll take care of our money with the same diligence. So
I'm sure.
Thank you.
Good.
And all right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So carried. Okay, next one, item C, resolution designating a bank as a repository of funds. I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution designating the bank, which is M&T, as identified as our repository of funds.
Second.
Thank you, Lynn.
Can we have discussion on this?
What?
Do we
Yes,
have-
I'm going to go into discussion right now. We have a second. Yes. Any discussion?
I just was looking at some of the timelines and I just wanted to clarify that from the county's procedure process, we're not going to be able to meet the August 1st deadline. We're going to get it as soon as possible, but we probably won't be able to get a check mailed out by August 1st. And then we also have an issue with our 2024 budget. We don't have access to those dollars until 2024, so we're not going to be able to get the 25,000 before January 1st. So we will get it as soon as we can after that, by February 1st latest.
Right. So Devin and I spoke about this, and the intent was that would be the date when we would send out invoices, billing would occur, and we all know that there's a natural billing cycle that has to occur for no matter where you are.
Yep.
And that, so I use those as target dates, January 1st being the start of the fiscal year was the reason for that, and August, because I want to make this effective August. And so whenever we get set up, everything that is done prior to this dates back to that August 1st date. Okay. Elizabeth, I saw your hand up.
thank you. Can we set the account up at the M&T branch in Rhinebeck, where we have a really good relationship with Mike Tellerday? David Tellerday, sorry.
Yes, David. Yes. I've already spoken to David since it's on the resolution to make sure that they were agreeable to doing this, and they were agreeable to setting it up at the bank there.
Great. I bank there, daily we're there, so
Yeah.
that would be helpful.
And not that there ain't any other good great banks, but
No,
it is convenient and we use them as well as municipality.
Good.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion carried. All right. Now for the really hard decision that we're going to make tonight.
Oh, boy.
I mean, I hope not. I'm being facetious. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing Hudson 7 to hire Rebecca Martin as a consultant as our protection coordinator.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Discussion.
I would like to say that Rebecca has helped us immensely since our formation. And I just feel incredibly fortunate for us as a group to have Rebecca stay with us and to be able to pay her finally for her invaluable services. And I hope everybody agrees with this. I just think we couldn't have gotten this far without not Riverkeeper, but Rebecca.
Thank you. Shannon, I saw a thumbs up. Was that your hand or just a thumbs up?
That's my full endorsement of Rebecca. And a second if you need one.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Congratulations, Rebecca.
Oh,
Thank you, Rebecca. Finally.
thank you all. And I do want to say, if I may, just really quickly, thank you for your confidence. And I really love working with the Hudson 7. And I do also want to thank Riverkeeper because Riverkeeper put me in this position for a really long time. And I'm grateful. So, and the way things have worked out, who could have predicted? But I'm excited to get to work and put more energy into you and your work and the council. So thank you.
We're excited and happy to have you. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
We're fortunate.
We are. We're blessed. All right. That took care of the hard stuff. I'm ready to call it a day and go celebrate, right? My bags are packed. I'm ready to go. I'm sorry.
Where are you going, Gare?
What?
Where are you going?
I'm heading south for a while. Yeah. Okay, right after this meeting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Right. All right, so next on the agenda, Indian Point, update on the legislation. Rebecca, do you have this?
Yes. So I was telling Dottie earlier that as of now, and Dan is here too, if he wants to chime in as well, but as of now, the plan is to, Holtec is to discharge tritium in batches as of September the 15th, but the Coalition of Partners, Riverkeeper, Food and Water Watch, and it's this very strong coalition of community members are pressing for Hochul to sign the bill before that time. So we're all putting a lot of energy into that now. But there's no 30-day notice. They gave one earlier in the year prior to the first deadline of discharges. And so it's September the 15th for now, but everybody's pushing really hard. So that's the update there, Gary.
So Rebecca, I assume that there's no new resolution for municipalities. I know myself and many of the other municipalities passed a resolution when this first came out, voting, expressing our opinions about the release of the tritium. So is there a new resolution that we need to circulate to municipalities?
There is a new letter that some counties are actually passing. I can get, just to really put the focus now on Governor Hochul, because if you recall, the original resolution that we had was specifically to the legislature to pass the legislation to go on to the governor. So if the Hudson 7 would like to take a look at that, happy to send that along. There's also a moratorium language that's been submitted by the community, by the coalition that we've submitted, which we can, or that's in your source packet that we can discuss. But I think putting any pressure on the governor, if the council decides to do that, would be the goal at this point. Yeah. I don't know, Dan, if you have anything to add to that. *6.
No, I don't think I have anything to add. Thanks, but also just wanted to congratulate you and thank the council. And I'm so glad that Rebecca's being hired. So since I have the mic, I'll say that.
Thanks, Dan. Would you like to put?
Is this in the form of a resolution that we as
Yeah.
an organization, Hudson 7, can
I
vote
can-
on at our next meeting? Or is that too late if we wait till our next meeting?
I think the sooner the better. If you want, I can draft the letter and send it around. You can look at it, Gary. We could send it around to get the approval to sign it. It's really similar to the language before. It's just aimed at Governor Hochul at this point. I think the sooner the better. I think people would appreciate it, but the next meeting, I think, is August the 17th.
All right.
Elizabeth has her hand raised.
Is this something that would be helpful for individual municipalities to pass as well? Because I'd be happy to do that.
Why don't I put a letter and the resolution together, Gary?
So what, I'd like to make a motion that, the distribution of this resolution to the Hudson 7 Council, and providing that everybody is in agreement, I have permission to sign the resolution and get it up to Governor Hochul. Do I have a second?
Second,
Thank you, Russ.
20
Discussion.
seconds. All right, good.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, so Rebecca, let you and I hook up and like we always do, and let's get it out and then ask for any comments. If none, I'll sign the letter and we'll get it out
Okay.
with approval of the council. Thank you. Paul, cybersecurity. Paul, you're muted.
Rebecca and I collected all the samples and now they're in our files for all the water utilities. We got all their emergency response plans. But I just wanted to bring to your attention that New York State is really looking at these a little more detail. They took an audit of 317 plants and 9% of them were out of date. And about 10% of them didn't even have a cybersecurity checklist, and that was due back in 2018. So now remember, in April of 2022, we sent out a memo to all the operators trying to help them get their cybersecurity in place. So that's all I have, unless there's any questions on that.
Everybody know where their plants are? I mean, their emergency plans, have access to them?
I don't know, but I know we have them.
We have,
I leave it out to them.
Okay. Well,
I'll find
can
out.
pay some attention to that, I guess. Paul, we're gonna keep you on task here. Lead service lines.
Okay, lead service lines. I know that everyone received that article about Poughkeepsie, and I just want to mention some things about that, but let me just go through the regulations. All inventories must be completed by October 16th of 2024. There's no exceptions, and every water utility has to do it. DOH is strongly recommending that the inventories be prepared using their templates. I've looked at it and it's really very good. It has drop-down menus to help operators determine whether it should be classified as a lead service line. Once the inventories are done, they have to be made public, and all unknown and galvanized service will be counted as lead service lines. And that means that when you start replacing them, they're going to be counted and you're going to have to do them. So that's important. Just a few comments about that article. You know, it first started off with 6 out of 10 children have lead poisoning or something like that. Most lead poisoning comes from lead paint, not drinking water. All the water treatment plants add chemicals to prevent corrosion and high levels of lead. Rich DePilka, I think, is still in charge of the program for the city. And the city actually started the replacement program before it was actually required. So they're a step ahead. The other thing they said was that the city wasted money on doing an inventory. Well, the inventory is required by EPA. And how can you determine where they are if you don't do an inventory? So I was a little upset about that article, but it is an important issue that we have to be aware of. I sent something out. You know, we gave a presentation, Ty and Bond gave a presentation January of 22. And if you look at some of the materials, you'll see some of the guidelines and more details. That's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Has anybody not started it? We know.
Is this inventory meant to be spatial? Like you have them mapped, or is it like a just description of the assets? Paul, do you know?
It's basically you have to locate each one of those lines and determine whether it's a lead service line or galvanized, or maybe it's unknown. A lot of people are using GIS to identify all those homes.
We're doing a physical inventory. We're going to every home. We set up an appointment with every home, all of our users, user base, and doing a physical inspection. And letting them know why we're there and what we're there for. And then filling out that form that Paul suggested to make sure that it's all documented.
So you're documenting in a different way. You're not doing GIS data where you can visualize
No, we're
them.
not.
Okay.
No, we're not going around GIS data mapping it while we're doing it.
Okay.
You know, we're just ringing it, calling them, setting up an appointment, ringing the doorbell, doing the inspection.
Yeah, the biggest issue with that, and I think a lot of municipalities are this way, mine is that the service connection belongs to the customer.
Right.
So, and I think most of us, if not all of us, our customers, they own on the sewer side, they own the sewer lateral, and on the water side, they own the water connection. But when the health department came out with this, it was now you, the public water system, are responsible for everything as far as life is concerned. So it makes it 100% on the PWS. So yeah, which is good. You know, any construction after 1986, we know that lead solder was gone. Lead should have been gone regardless. So finding records, the record keeping part is the that's my biggest part. Just going back to records when condos put in and looking at the installed that.
Gary, so I'll just comment, and Paul, thanks for your comments there about the frustration about that article. I certainly share your frustration, or probably could amplify it a little more here with a couple of comments. In my role as mayor and city administrator for the city of Poughkeepsie. So the Times-Union ran an article without comment from me. I was unavailable that day. The article was, completely erroneous. A couple days later, when I was available for comment, talking to the editor, the reporter redid the story. In that story, I'm quoted and corrected 90% of what was wrong. At the time of my giving that interview, though, I didn't have all of the information. I later found out that the article was further incorrect in that it stated the city of Poughkeepsie missed an important grant application deadline in August of 22. And I'll just take this opportunity to put it on the record here at Hudson 7 that city of Poughkeepsie did not miss that grant deadline. We just weren't approved and our application didn't make the funding level at the state. So, first of all, the city of Poughkeepsie has met every grant deadline. We're strenuously looking for federal and state resources to attack that. We've got a grant pending to do an inventory that will include GIS. A comprehensive inventory that, as we've said, is required to be done by everybody by October of 24. I also want to just comment that the average cost of lead line replacements in the city of Poughkeepsie is around $25,000 That is contrary to what was reported as a statewide average of about 10,000. The $10,000 number we found out subsequent to the misreporting by the TU was issued in a New York State DOH report from back in 19 and was based on data from at least 18 and possibly 17. But our point here in the city is that the $10,000 average is my quote in the Times Union. I think I used the word absurd. Some municipalities, and we're talking about in the city of Poughkeepsie, are expenditures of about $544,000 that was a grant for lead service line replacements issued by the state back in 2017. We started implementing that rather quickly in 2018. I was the city administrator at the time that made the decision on behalf of the city to, when we replace the lead line, we're going to do the full service line. And to your point, that's both halves, our half and their half, right? Property owners' half. It's interesting, though, that when the state came up with that grant program, my understanding was the first one, is that the state left it up to the individual municipalities to design the implementation of how you were going to use that money. And that was rather unusual in my public sector experience, because typically you get a grant for $500,000. It's pretty clear what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. But around the state, you had variations in how municipalities deployed that money. Some did partial line replacements, only that part of the line that is our responsibility, and didn't touch the part that was the property owners. Others, like the city of Poughkeepsie, chose to do the full line, which meant that we are replacing lead service lines on private property. My own view is that is unconstitutional. My own view, personal view, is that possibly the reason the state didn't mandate which way to do it, partial or full, was because somebody at the AG's office realized that we didn't want to make that decision at the state level as to whether or not we're going to go into private property and replace the lead service lines all the way to the kitchen sink, right? The fact that the city of Poughkeepsie does full line and did full line may explain why our average cost was higher than other municipalities. Some municipalities did their part and then gave up to $10,000 in reimbursement to the property owner if the property owner elected to do their part. Other municipalities, we suspect, and we're looking into this, were smart enough to say, we'll only do our half and we'll give you the reimbursement portion for your half, but we're only going to do our half if you agree to do your half. We're not going to do our half if you won't do your half. But we've not yet found a municipality that implemented that grant program like that. The last thing I wanted to comment about this is that it was also an erroneous report by the TU. We tried to correct it, that Assemblymember Jacobson had played a large role in getting the city of Poughkeepsie that grant. The grant was approved by the state of New York in 2017, and Member Jacobson did not take office until 2018. So the city of Poughkeepsie has gotten to this point absolutely zero help from anybody at any level of government to secure those grants until recently, when we were contacted by Congressman Ryan. And I want to publicly thank the congressman on the record for his outreach to the city of Poughkeepsie. And he was recently reported has reached out to the EPA. I just, as this meeting was starting, got an invitation by email from the EPA, which is going to be, and they've been very kind and gracious to accept the congressman's offer to spend a little time with Poughkeepsie in terms of our upcoming grant applications. We have 2 current grant applications up at the state. And there's a third one, I think, where the deadline was extended till August 11th. We'll have that one timely filed, and I believe there's another federal deadline coming up at the end of August. So I just wanted to make sure everybody at the Hudson 7 and those watching at home understood that the city of Poughkeepsie is all over this. We've been all over it. In my role as chairman of the Joint Water Board, of course, I'm well aware that we here at the treatment plant treat our water for lead. I also serve on the Dutchess County Board of Health. I was appointed by the Dutchess County Legislature to that body, and I'm also well aware that testing and other studies around the country have proved definitively that the elevated levels in blood is almost invariably more tied directly to lead paint than it is to lead in our water line. So sorry for that lengthy expose, but I wanted to set the record straight. And obviously, the city of Poughkeepsie is not alone in this issue. Every municipality shares the same burden. So thanks very much, everybody.
So Mark, I have a question because
Yep.
something that you touched on something that we're working on, and that's the private property piece.
Right.
Have you created some sort of agreement with the property owner, or how are you approaching to do the work on private property?
So the grant money that was awarded to the city in 17, the 544,000, I think all but about 70,000 has been fully deployed. We might have one or two left to do, but the answer to your question, Carrie, is no. Obviously, if the feds or the state come in with significant resources and we undertake a large scale replacement program, the issue of whether or not we should even work and undertake that on private property is a legal question.
Right.
And we'll be asking our corporation counsel to give us a legal opinion on whether us doing that would pose violations of the New York State Constitution or not. My own view is that, I've got a tremendous trepidation about the public sector taking on work on private property. The minute you knock down a wall, I mean, I used to own an old farmhouse. You knock down a wall, suddenly the municipality could be responsible for all kinds of other things that are ancillary to the work that we're trying to do. So we have great concern about that.
So you haven't figured out a path for that.
We're going to be looking for guidance from the
Right.
state and federal partners
Okay.
as to what to do.
When you have that, can you share
Oh, yeah.
that to all of us? Because
Absolutely.
I think that is to me, it's the Achilles heel for this process.
It is, and I'll just add too that you're now getting into the real the elephant in the room, which is if we're going to work on private property and do a full line, and we concede and agree that the best science is that doing partial line replacements is not best practices because of the risk of stirring up the contaminants, right? So we agree with that. But having done so, let's just look for a moment at the decision that we make to work on private property. Now it becomes doubly important. Who do you do first? Who do you do last? And in what order do you undertake it in a city of 32,000 people with some 5,500 lead service lines? You now get into the equity issue of, am I doing yours before I do yours? When we implemented the $544,000 program, the state provided very little guidance on how we should make those equity choices. It was me as a lowly city administrator that said back in 18, well, let's first of all look at properties that have young children or newborn children. I think we might very well have been the only municipality to deploy that grant that prioritized daycare centers, which is another reason why we had, I think, 14 lead service lines replaced, was because we did 3 daycare centers. But, so to your point, there are a lot of questions about this.
All right, because I thank you.
Gary, there's a few hands raised on here. I just wanted to bring your attention.
So Dan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Well, one, just really quick, selfishly, if I think Radhika Fox from the EPA is supposed to be one of the ones who visits, and if there's any way to join a portion of the events when the EPA contingent's in town, I'd love to be part of it. But more to the point, I'm curious, Mark. I understand that everything you said and the sense of wanting to correct the record where you see it's been incorrect. But I wonder, is there anything in the advocacy that environmental advocates did do that you took as that you can take away as a way to improve or change the direction? Was there anything that you took as learning from that, and particularly that others might learn from as well?
Yeah, great question, Dan. And not so much from the report, but I will compliment and thank the authors, not of the TU report, but of the underlying report that was drafted by the environmental group. I met with them virtually subsequent to the TU articles and kind of had a meeting of the minds. there was a lot wrong with it, but what was right with it was, I think, number one, they emphasized the need for more and better testing, with which we agree, and that messaging, I think, needs to be redoubled, maybe with the help of our county partners, and I intend to bring that up at the Board of Health. So obviously, the testing component was interesting to us, and we take that very seriously. The second thing that came out of that discussion was that there is proposed legislation being circulated around the state. I think the city of Troy is the only one so far to have passed it, to adopt this legislation being proposed that would essentially, at the municipal level, create a timeline by which we hold ourselves accountable to have all of the lead service lines replaced. I haven't seen that legislation yet. I've asked to get a copy of it. I think it's going to be presented to our Common Council sometime in September. And in that briefing, I think the Troy model was a 10-year event horizon, by which time municipalities should have gotten this done. The other thing, Dan, to your question was, the discussion and the report really opened the door to some serious thinking on the part of city department heads and myself and engineering about, the total cost of lead line replacements in the city. The original estimate that we had come back of the envelope was about 130 million. We've just today had a meeting and upped that to about 170 million because, we're going to have to provide estimates to, Congressman Ryan and other partners, how significant a problem this is. And then lastly, it also stimulated some good conversations about the city's borrowing ability, to the extent that we can't rely solely on grants to address this serious health concern. And obviously, even though the city of Poughkeepsie did just receive its, we regained our investment grade quality bond rating, with interest rates being what they are, I don't know that the city of Albany could go and borrow 140 or 170 million dollars to replace its lead service line. So, Dan, I think that's a quick or longer-winded way of saying that this did generate some very worthwhile discussion. It wasn't all negative at all. And frankly, in defense of the TU, I wasn't available for comment. And when I was, they did their best to correct it.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Elizabeth, did you have your hand up or no? I thought I saw it.
I'm listening to Mark and I hear you, but I just think that there are problems that need to be solved that shouldn't be politicized, or I just think we need to solve these problems. People deserve clean drinking water, and I think that's why we're here.
Well, we're at the joint water plant, and just to be clear, Ms. Finzi, the production of water.
Elizabeth, you can call me Elizabeth.
I'll be glad to do so since you've authorized it. But the output from this water plant is clean drinking water. I think we need to be.
Mark, I'm talking about the don't politicize
Okay.
pipes to homes.
Let me
People
finish.
deserve clean drinking water.
Okay, I'm not politicizing anything. I'm simply setting the record straight. That the Times Union, you use the word crisis. This is not.
We're here to do work together, and we've been like, let's figure out how to do our work.
And how do you propose we do that? 170 million in the city of Poughkeepsie. And what's your view on whether we should replace the lead pipes on private property? I'm just curious, since we all want to work together. What's your opinion?
I am not a city administrator. I'm not an elected official in a city. I'm a town supervisor. We solve problems. You have a lot of poor people in your city, a lot of people who can't afford to do this. And there's got to be a way.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Thank you for sharing that, Mark.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mike, so there?
Yes, I'm here.
Update on the DWSP2.
Sure. There's not a big update on my end. I've been putting a lot of work into the maps we've discussed in our last subcommittee meeting, and they're about finalized. So we have an upcoming meeting on Friday, August 4th. And the focus of that meeting will be finalizing these maps, and then we'll begin discussing protection and management methods for the plan. And that's all.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So at the last meeting, we discussed, and we had then a subcommittee meeting on the anchorages and the overview of the proposal. John Liscombe has asked if he could be a lead participant in those discussions, as well as we're moving forward to understand what's happening to it. He's a valuable source, not only as an environmentalist, but his eyes on the river and the things that he sees are going to be important for us to move forward. So I don't know if I need a vote on this, but I'd like to make a recommendation that we include John Liscombe as one of our technical advisors on the subcommittee for anchorage.
Second.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. And also, out of that discussion, we had a meeting that basically said that we need to quickly act on this. And one of the things we need to act on is finding out what the RNA process is. All right, so we drafted a letter, a very simple letter. What is the process? And sent it to them, and asked for they received and acknowledged it. And so we're trying to understand what it means, in terms for us to create this zone, whether it be at wherever it is and however large it is, what that process is that we need to go through. And then the subcommittee will address trying to do that and report back to this committee on those outcomes. Okay. Dan or anybody else have any other comments?
I don't.
Okay. You would, yes. I've just passed around everyone the long-awaited engineer peer review report by Ty and Bond. Dan Valentine has joined us remotely to add comment, but what I want to draw your attention to is there's a really good executive summary in the front, and we can really quickly hit on the highlights of that. But before we do that, I just want to bring everybody up to speed. We had a very productive meeting with Chippy and the PSC at the same time. We traveled up to Albany. Myself, Randy Elstad came with us. Danielle was there, and Chippy people were there, as well as Victoria Polidoro and the general counsel, as well as the deputy general counsel and chief policy person, who's very close with the PSC members, the commissioners themselves. So we had a good group. At that point, only a few days before had we really gotten this report that you see here. And this iteration here is almost identical, just a few tweaks to what we reviewed with the PSC. And it was great that we had that with them, because we were able to flip to the executive summary and go through some of the concerns that Ty and Bond helped identify around the pilot and other concerns around the construction project overall. So out of that meeting, we got our concerns on the table. We also had a TDI Town of Esopus meeting, which was just earlier this week. We didn't realize until 3/4 of the way through the meeting that that meeting, along with every other municipal meeting that's been had, was the one tick the box pre-EM&C certificate meeting that was required by the certificate. So what was good in a way is that we had the benefit of this study before having that meeting, so that during the discussion that we had with them, we could bring up the relevant concerns that were identified by the engineers. The only concern I have is that everyone else had their meetings, but didn't have the benefit of some of the insight in this report. So I think Dan, if it's okay with you, Gary, can we just hit the very highlights?
Yeah, I'm going to be closing this meeting at 6
Okay.
on the dot.
Okay, I will just say
Because
the
I
one,
have.
you
an
got to go
agenda.
somewhere like important on a beach or something, hopefully. So just the big insight to us that came out of the meeting that we had with TDI is that ahead of the operation itself to jet plow, they're going to be using the grapple, which goes down to 3 or 4 feet into the sediment. So, and that's going to occur before the jet plow operation. And it seemed like it was several days, maybe a week. And I don't know if it's a month, but the whole idea of the grapple is that it's going to drag along the path and pick up any huge debris, cars or anything obstructing the path. What brought our attention to that concern is that it's like 2 operations. Twice everybody's going to have to shut down the plant. Twice we're going to be on the lookout. But it's also another opportunity, you know, that top 4 feet of sediment is the most toxic part of the sediment, to run some tests before the actual jet plow operation. So it's twice the risk, but it also is a factor that we need to be aware of, and that Time Bond has accounted for in their report. Dan, do you really want to quickly, like in 5 minutes or less, hit the very biggest highlights of the exec summary?
Sure. Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, I know this group has done a lot of good work in reviewing the pilot test that was prepared by TDI, as well as the sediment sampling activities that occurred in the vicinity of the Hudson 7 intakes. So this is really kind of building on that. We took a fresh look at the data and the reports. In general, there's a couple data gaps just with not knowing the sediment quality closest to the Esopus intake and not having a comparable sediment quality at the pilot test location. All that being said, the results from the pilot test, as you all have probably talked about, did indicate that it seems as if sediment being kicked up from the jet plow and contaminants that are mobilized should go back down to background or before jet plow levels within a short duration, a few hours. It's unclear as to how long that will take. And so I think what we really have focused the second half on this report on is what do we do about that, and how do the treatment plants prepare for that eventuality? It's not clear that there will be no impact, so I think it's prudent to shut down the treatment plants while the jet plow is going past. I also think it's prudent to have some online testing that a third-party monitor can do at each intake while the jet plow goes past, and that data will give treatment plant operators some assurances that water level contaminants have gone down to background levels before they feel comfortable turning the treatment plants back on. We also spent a good part of this report thinking about emergency response plans and what happens if those water levels do not go down. If there's an extended duration, each system has their own storage capacities in which they can afford to be offline. We focused in on this report on Esopus because that happened to be what we were looking at specifically, but each Hudson 7 treatment plant needs to understand their capacities and how long they can be offline and what their emergency response plan would be if something comes up and water qualities don't go back to normal. So that's the high level kind of synopsis of what we looked at in the report. And Shannon, I'll turn it back over to you if you want to highlight.
I mean, when we had our meeting, Shannon, all these points we listed and documented with them as part of it. So
good.
And
your degree of thoroughness is not universal to every town. So I'll just call out a couple of things for the EM and CP recommendations. The TDI, the recommendation is that there be a third-party construction monitoring entity, that there be thresholds established in advance with resulting actions if these thresholds are exceeded. There's a very detailed emergency response set of recommendations and a number of phases, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4 in there in terms of advising water treatment plants how to prepare. There's a communications plan recommendation. There is other points around the EM and CP that, requires TDI to acknowledge that the cable route will not move any closer to any of our intakes, to potentially maintain a log during jet plow operation, and to do real-time testing so that water treatment operators can get real-time data as the operation is going. I think the next step for this report is some kind of meeting between water treatment operators to share the insights from the report and recommendations to get them prepared, to level set now what to expect in a year from now, if that's the projected construction timeline that we talked about at the PSC, is a year from now. And then as we approach towards that time, making sure that that network of water treatment operators stays connected and is implementing these specific sets of recommendations to prepare. So that's a thing that I think this group can support, and Paul and Randy, I hope, could take the lead on getting that network together of water treatment operators to prepare. And then the other thing is that I thought of is it would be ideal now that every municipality has had their consultation with TDI. It would be appropriate, it seems, to follow up with a letter to TDI that takes and highlights the EM and CP recommendations in this report, plus the ones that you made in your letter earlier. And then issues a letter saying, now, because the last time we spoke to them about the EM and CP, we said it's not complete until this is done. Now we can say this is done. Here's part A, here's part B of the recommendations. This is what we as the Hudson 7, now that we've all individually consulted with you, want to recommend for the EM and CP, because some municipalities didn't do as thorough of a, consultation. So that's my recommendation. And Town of Esopus is prepared to draft our own version of that, which may differ from Hudson 7, but in drafting that, we can offer that template to the Hudson 7 if the Hudson 7 wants to collectively go in and follow through with just a short follow-up letter to TDI saying, here it is, here are specific EM and CP recommendations, here's the report, and thank you for the consultations, and then we can say, we're done with this part of the process.
Thank you, Shannon. All right, I'm gonna move on. Lower Esopus Creek. Paul, do you have anything to add about Lower Esopus? There's been a lot of news coming out of the committee right now. You're muted, Paul. Paul, you're muted.
Someday I'll learn how to work the system. The big thing is that the Delaware Aqueduct repairs are going to be delayed a year, mainly because they couldn't find the amount of dewatering they had to do. They couldn't keep up with their pumps when they tried it. So it's going to be another year. But during that time, we found out that FEMA has assumed that the reservoir is not full during a major flood. And that statement is not true. And so the flooding could be much more extensive than what FEMA is calculating at this point in time. So I'm really working with County of Ulster, and they're supposed to be meeting with DEP. But why is it a concern for us? Well, any flood is going to really contaminate the Hudson River because there's sewage overflow, there's all types of things, oil and gas. So that's why I'm very concerned about flooding. So that's about it.
All right, so I'd just like to take 2 minutes and thank everybody for all of the work that's been accomplished and to get us to the point where we are now ready to really start working on becoming a 501c3. Having our amendments, having the ability to hire, setting up the bank account. And Rebecca, I spoke to the legal today, and we should have our TIN number to open up the bank account tomorrow. All right. So this is to me, it's a monumentous moment, and I wish I could take you all out and have a beer with, right? Because to get to this point was truly phenomenal, and the work that the county has given us to be able to do this, I'd like to thank the county for helping us to get the legal services and everything in place, and all of you that have worked to get us to this point. We're getting there. With that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Chair, just one thing under, maybe just go back up if we can for just 1 minute to the report. First of all, I just want to thank you for sharing it. It probably would have been useful to me, as you indicated, Shannon, to have it prior to my meeting with Chippy. But just two quick questions. So I notice it is not in final form. Does that mean it should not be circulated, or can it be circulated?
It means that we didn't want to finalize it until you all had seen it and provided feedback. And I really encourage everyone to read at least the executive summary. It's not that long, and it hits on all the main points.
And then the last question is, I notice on page 3.1, and kudos to Ty and Bond. It's a good report as I skim it, but it says, and I quote, at this time, the draft EM and CP has not been submitted, made available. We will review it once it's made available and then update section 3.2 accordingly. So that's the plan, then this report would be updated?
Yes, I believe so. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, we can certainly do it that way, or we can provide those comments directly to TDI. What we tried to spell out is things that we'd like to see in the EM and CP before it's drafted. And then hopefully we would have a chance to comment on that.
Okay, good. Well, good work, and thanks very much for sharing it. We appreciate it. Thank you.
TDI did say that we got our money's worth, that it was a good report. They admitted this. The engineer admitted it was a good report, and then we got our money's worth.
Well, Ty and Bond did it, so that's good with me. Thank you, Chair.
All right, so I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. And have a nice vacation.
Thank
Where are
you.
you headed?
Myrtle Beach.
Oh, very nice.
It's gonna be hot.